Pause for a moment and ask yourself this. Why is it that the people who know the least often speak with the most confidence? Why do the loudest voices in a room so often belong to the least informed? Why do entire societies follow leaders who are certain of their greatness, yet blind to their incompetence? We've all seen it. The co-worker who insists they know better than the experts. The friend who watches a single documentary and suddenly becomes a master of geopolitics. The online commentator who lectures doctors, scientists, and philosophers with unwavering certainty. And the paradox runs deeper. While the unskilled shout with confidence, the truly knowledgeable whisper with caution. Those who have spent years studying, questioning, and refining their craft often hesitate, doubting themselves more than anyone else. This raises a disturbing question. Could it be that stupidity carries its own kind of shield, an illusion of intelligence so strong that it blinds people not only to the truth, but to their own ignorance? Psychologists have a name for this phenomenon. It is called the Dunning-Kruger Effect, and once you understand it, you will never look at confidence or intelligence the same way again. Stay with me until the end, because the story of why stupid people think they're smart isn't just psychology, it's a window into human nature itself, and it may forever change how you judge the voices around you, and even your own. At first glance, the world seems upside down. Shouldn't knowledge bring certainty and ignorance bring humility? Shouldn't the people who understand the least be the most careful in their opinions? Yet, time and again, reality shows us the opposite. In politics, business, culture, even in daily conversations, we encounter the same paradox. The less people know, the more they think they know. The philosopher Bertrand Russell once remarked, "The whole problem with the world is that fools and fanatics are always so certain of themselves, while wiser people are so full of doubts." Why is this? Why do confidence and competence so often pull in opposite directions? To answer that, we need to return to a bizarre crime that almost by accident revealed one of the deepest flaws in human thinking. It was 1995 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. A man named MacArthur Wheeler walked boldly into two banks in broad daylight and demanded money. He wore no mask, no disguise, nothing to hide his identity. Security cameras captured his face perfectly. Within hours, the police had his name, his address, and his freedom. When they arrested him, Wheeler was stunned. But I wore the juice," he protested. What did he mean? Wheeler had smeared his face with lemon juice, convinced it would make him invisible to security cameras. His reasoning was tragically simple. Lemon juice can be used as invisible ink, so surely it could make him invisible too. It sounds absurd, but Wheeler wasn't joking. He was certain, so certain in fact, that he never bothered with a mask. This case baffled psychologists. How could a man be so wrong and yet so confident? The story reached social psychologist David Dunning, who was fascinated by Wheeler's misplaced certainty. Dunning realized the problem wasn't just ignorance, it was ignorance of ignorance. Wheeler didn't just fail at knowledge, he failed at recognizing the limits of his knowledge. And so, with his student Justin Kruger, Dunning set out to study this phenomenon scientifically. In 1999, Dunning and Kruger published their now famous study in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology. They tested groups of people on grammar, logic, and humor. After each test, participants were asked to estimate how well they had performed compared to others. The results were shocking, but consistent. Those who scored in the bottom quartile, the least skilled, dramatically overestimated their performance. They believed they had performed better than most of their peers, when in reality they were among the worst. Meanwhile, those who performed best, the true experts, often underestimated their relative performance. They assumed that if something felt easy for them, it must be easy for everyone. Dunning summarized the finding with a devastating truth. If you're incompetent, you can't know you're incompetent. The skills you need to recognize a good answer are the very skills you lack. The effect wasn't limited to test rooms. It explained behaviors in classrooms, workplaces, politics, and everyday life. And it revealed something sobering. Ignorance doesn't just mislead, it blinds. At the core of the Dunning-Kruger effect lies a failure of metacognition, the ability to reflect on one's own knowledge and thinking. To evaluate how skilled you are at something, you need two things: the skill itself, the ability to judge that skill. But if you lack the skill, you also lack the tools to recognize your lack. In other words, you don't know what you don't know. This is why beginners so often feel confident. They see only the surface. They learn a few basics and think they've mastered the whole field, but the deeper layers of complexity remain invisible to them. On top of this, we are wired with cognitive biases that amplify the problem. Confirmation bias makes us notice evidence that supports our beliefs while ignoring what contradicts them. The above-average effect leads most people to believe they are better than average at nearly everything: driving, intelligence, leadership. Statistically impossible, but psychologically comforting. Together, these blind spots create a dangerous illusion. The less we know, the more confident we feel. The more we know, the more cautious we become. As the ancient philosopher Confucius once said, real knowledge is to know the extent of one's ignorance, but that realization comes only with humility and experience, qualities that ignorance often lacks. To visualize the Dunning-Kruger effect, many describe it as a curve. It's not an exact graph, but it paints a vivid picture of how confidence shifts with competence. It begins at Mount Stupid. This is the peak of beginner's confidence. You learn a little, and suddenly you feel like you know everything. It's the stage of the internet expert, the instant philosopher, the loud but uninformed voice. Then comes the valley of despair. As you learn more, the illusion shatters. You realize how much you don't know. Confidence plummets, replaced by humility. Many people quit here, overwhelmed by the weight of their ignorance. But if you persist, you begin the slope of enlightenment. Slowly, knowledge builds. Confidence grows again, not from illusion, but from genuine understanding. Finally, you reach the plateau of sustainability. Here, true expertise lives. You know your field deeply, yet you remain aware of its limits. You are steady, cautious, realistic. This is why true experts often sound uncertain, while novices sound sure. The expert sees the vast ocean of the unknown. The novice sees only the puddle before them. As the ancient philosopher Socrates declared, the only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing. It is not doubt that makes you weak. It is certainty without knowledge that makes you a fool.
When David Dunning and Justin Kruger tested their hypothesis, they discovered something both startling and strangely obvious in hindsight. Participants were asked to complete tasks in grammar, logic, and humor, areas where most people believe they have at least some skill. Afterward, each participant was asked to assess their own performance. The results painted a troubling picture. The people who performed the worst consistently rated themselves far higher than their actual scores. Some believed they were above average, when in reality they were among the lowest performers. Meanwhile, those who performed well, the genuinely skilled, often underestimated themselves. They assumed the tasks were easy for everyone, when in fact their competence was rare. This revealed a profound truth. The less we know, the less capable we are of recognizing how much we don't know. Ignorance doesn't just leave us empty, it actively deceives us. As Dunning later put it, incompetent people do not recognize, scratch that, cannot recognize, just how incompetent they are. The implications are enormous. It means that stupidity is not merely a lack of knowledge, but a distortion of self-perception. It breeds an illusion of superiority, blinding people to their own limitations. And perhaps most dangerously, this illusion feels empowering. It gives people the courage to speak loudly, to argue confidently, and to impose their views on others, while those with real insight often hesitate, doubting themselves. This is why the world often feels upside down. The loudest voices dominate the conversation, while the most qualified remain quiet in the background. Why does this happen? Why do the ignorant grow confident, while the wise grow cautious? The answer lies in metacognition, our ability to think about our own thinking. Skilled individuals possess the awareness to evaluate themselves critically. They can step outside their own minds, examine their assumptions, and admit when they might be wrong. But the unskilled lack this mirror. They don't have the tools to assess their failures, so mistakes appear invisible. They confuse confidence with competence because they cannot distinguish the difference. It is the paradox of ignorance, not knowing enough to know what you don't know. This blindness is reinforced by powerful psychological forces. Confirmation bias. We seek evidence that supports our beliefs and ignore what challenges them. Illusory superiority. We overestimate our abilities in comparison to others, a bias so common it's nicknamed the better-than-average effect. The unknown unknowns. As Donald Rumsfeld famously said, there are things we don't know we don't know. The ignorant often dwell entirely in this shadowed realm. Together, these forces create a dangerous cocktail. People not only make poor decisions, they do so with unshakable conviction. And here lies the cruel irony. Those who most desperately need humility are often the least capable of feeling it. To visualize this strange relationship between confidence and competence, imagine a graph. On the vertical axis, confidence. On the horizontal axis, actual skill. At the very beginning of learning something new, whether it's driving a car, playing chess, or starting a new job, confidence skyrockets. With only a little knowledge, people feel they've mastered the subject. This is the infamous peak of Mount Stupid. From this height, the view seems clear. People think they understand more than experts. They are quick to advise, to judge, to proclaim truths as if they've grasped the whole picture. But as learning continues, something humbling happens. They encounter complexity. They realize how vast the subject truly is. Confidence collapses into what is called the valley of despair. This is where genuine growth begins. Those who persist climb gradually up the slope of enlightenment, gaining real competence, tempered by humility. Eventually, they reach the plateau of sustainability, where confidence is grounded not in illusion, but in hard-earned wisdom. The curve of the Dunning-Kruger effect reveals a sobering truth. Ignorance is loud, but wisdom is quiet. The people who know the least shout from Mount Stupid, while those who know the most often whisper from the plateau. And if you listen closely, you'll notice our world is filled with the echoes of Mount Stupid. On television, in politics, on social media, even around the family dinner table. The question is, why do we give the loudest voices the most attention when history shows that true wisdom so often hides in silence?